Hey there, grab your coffee and let's talk business. How to grow it, how to sustain it, and how to harness the wonderful World Wide Web to do it. With me, your host, Jennifer Sikowski. Let's get started. Welcome to a brand new episode of Rainy Day Talks podcast. And today we have a repeat guest, Mr. Johnny Falke, a.k.a. Johnny Flash. Johnny, thank you so much for coming back to the podcast.
Jan, I always love getting to hang out with you. Thanks for having me.
We were just talking for the last 30 minutes. And like you had mentioned, if we could just hit record on our preliminary talk, I would probably have another podcast just in those chats.
Yeah, totally.
So for those that might be just chiming in, please tell us who you are and the business that you run and what you do.
So I'm John Falke, also known as Johnny Flash. My business is Johnny Flash Productions. We do web and digital, web design, digital marketing, that kind of stuff. We have a lot of church. I was on staff at a church, so we have a lot of church clients and Christian nonprofit ministries, and we have a lot of small and medium business. And before I was running my business full time for the last 4 years, I worked on staff at a church, and I was trying to add up how many interns and staff people and contractors that I've hired, but a lot. I think interns alone, I probably had like a dozen or so interns that I had over, one per year over a lot of different years. So have done a decent amount of hiring beyond even just like my own business, but I'm sure there's people listening that have a much more hiring experience than I do.
Well, and that kind of leads us into our talk for today, because the last episode, I believe it was episode 10, and that'll be linked in the show notes. But we were talking about reoccurring revenue and how reoccurring revenue has impacted both of our businesses. And we went down that conversation on what it is and how to set it up for your business. And any business can really come up with a reoccurring revenue like income stream for their business. Afterwards, we started talking about some of our own issues within our business, and hiring came up. So for those, I don't think I have shared this, Johnny, when I was looking to expand my team, I was really struggling with just finding the right people. And Johnny came out of the woodwork and was like, I have the process for you. And he pretty much saved the day when it came to building out my team, because I now have, since talking with him, I've hired 3 different employees or contractors, and it has been phenomenal. So I wanted to bring you back on to talk about, okay, let's take a step back. When someone who has built their business and they're just starting out and they're getting busy, right? Like they're stuck doing the client work, doing the work, and they need a hire. When would you identify when that point is that it's time to hire?
I don't know if there's like a one size fits all kind of like when it's time to hire, but I think you probably need to hire someone before you're ready to before you think you're at the point that you need to hire someone. And by that, I mean, it's kind of like when you have a child, right? Or you're going to get married, you kind of think like you have to you're going to get to this point where like you're ready to as a couple have a child, or you're going to get to this point where you like feel comfortable and you're ready to get married. And like, the reality is like, you don't know what you don't know. Like you're going to learn some along the way. And so if you wait till that like perfect moment and you have every duck in a row and all the revenue that you need and all this stuff, like you're going to be hiring late, as opposed to like probably when you should. And so I think hiring like a little bit before you're ready. And now obviously we can talk about like what it takes to get ready to hire and to do that well in the onboarding. But I mean, you know what I mean? Just in the sense of like hiring before, maybe a little bit before you think you need to, or you're ready to.
I concur, because I know in my own situation here lately, I've waited too long. Just for example, like we brought in an admin, and I was drowning with administrative tasks, and I should have hired way before, because if you think about it, if you're so busy doing the work and then you have to onboard someone to shift that work, but you still are inundated with that client work, it's very hard to just stop and train someone, because I know for me, it was internally, I kept thinking, I should be working on this, or this isn't helping me right now, or this isn't a fire. And I would constantly go back to those priorities. So I definitely agree for my own business. I've always hired last, like, or after the fact that I needed. So that's good. So you had mentioned about onboarding. Talk to me about what does it mean to onboard a new hire, or how do you get ready for that?
So quick story, going back to your last thing real quick, and then we can jump to this. And that is when I was working at the church, before I started working at the church, they were building a new building, and they hired me kind of in preparation for this new building with all this new technology open. They could have waited until they were in the new building. They had all these projection screens and all this other stuff that they needed, content and plan for and everything. But they ended up hiring me about, it was probably like 6 or 8 months beforehand. And like the amount that we were able to do, because it wasn't like we've got to have it right this second. And like, oh, great, we've got all these screens and content. Like, our church doubled just from going into the new building and sustained that. And I think a lot of that was that the church, this isn't to my credit, this is just to the church's credit, that they had kind of like been planning for those hires before they needed them, so that there would be enough runway to like let them get off the ground and fly, right? And so kind of going back to what you were saying is like, if you wait till you're drowning in the tasks, then it's like your plane's barely going to get off the ground, versus if you do it like seeing down the road, hey, we're, admin stuff keeps increasing, we're picking up more clients. Like, we just need to do this now to set us up for, the takeoff. So just to kind of throw that out there. But yeah, I mean, I think onboarding, the more that you are able to, like, once you get to the point where you say, okay, we need to hire the admin person, we need to hire the sales guy, we need to hire the designer, the marketer, whatever it is that you need in your business, and then I think it's figuring out, okay, what do I really need that person to do? Like, what's the job description? What are the responsibilities? What are the outcomes? I think a lot of times we think in tasks, but it's really, what are the outcomes that I want them to achieve for us?
We went over when to hire, and ideally we want to hire before we really need to hire that person. Before we talk about onboarding, let's talk about the actual hiring process itself, the selection. Where do we post a job? I know that's a big question for me, is how did you decide to outsource? Because that was a great solution for my hiring needs. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I think anyone who's thinking about, they get to the point where I'm drowning in this admin work or whatever, and they're like, okay, we need to hire someone. Sometimes you're not sure exactly what type of person you're trying to hire, or other people make the mistake of like, I'm going to hire the unicorn that can, they can do the admin, and they're a designer, and they can also like build web pages, and they're an SEO specialist. And like, before you know it, it's like, you're going to get someone who's really not that good at most of that, but maybe they can do one or two of those things. So I think whether, some people would recommend, book that I just read recently was saying like, log your time for a week and see like where you're spending your time that you don't want to be spending your time, or what is it that you're trying to accomplish that you're not able to get done because you don't have that video editor or that social media person on your team, or whatever the position is, right? So you got to kind of quantify, okay, what do I really need help with? And can I write it down? Can I make it clear? How much time am I spending per week doing that? How much time do I wish somebody else was spending in addition to the time I'm spending, because I'm not able to get it all done in the 8 hours that I'm doing the social media stuff or whatever, So I think figuring out like what you really need. And so that might be, listing that out, logging your own time. It's funny. I log my own time, even though I, for the most part, don't have to. So I'm using the Toggle app on my phone, and I have all the clients in there. I have all the different types of work that I do. And so every week I get emailed a report that says, this is how many hours you worked, and this is how you spent your time. And it's not because I have to answer to anyone or send it to anything. It's more because I want to know where my time's going. How much did I actually work? I only worked 30 hours last week and we got all that done. That's great, or whatever, or man, I worked 45, 50 hours and I spent a lot of it doing this. And then it's like, I don't really want to be doing that. So I need to hire someone for that. So I think there's a lot of ways you can figure out, what you need to hire for. But then it's like you said, do you hire someone local? Do you hire someone overseas in another country? And that really depends on a lot of things, right? What kind of work do you need done? what kind of budget do you have for it? Is it something that needs to be done at in real time, like during the day? Can it be done at nighttime? Do they need to interact with your clients? Do they have phone calls? Is it something you can just kind of like task them with and they can just like go do it on their own time? So you have to kind of like figure out like what's the best.
And I think what makes the most sense to your industry, your business,
Sure.
your market.
Mm-hmm.
So before you continue, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Because now that I got smart and I'm writing down notes as you're talking, so I don't forget the questions that I need to ask is, did you find it hard because I did the same thing, and I am going to, as a free download, I'll add that spreadsheet on when it's dividing up your time and looking for the positions that you need to fill, because I think that's important. And I like to touch on the concept that we have to realize that we can be duplicated.
Mm-hmm.
Like our tasks can be duplicated, because sometimes we get in this mindset that like, oh, nobody can do the job that I'm doing, and let's be honest, like if you can record or loom it and make a training video on it, you can train somebody. Mm-hmm. So did you have that kind of mindset, or did you have to overcome that?
Oh no, I think you have to overcome it. I mean, I think we all feel like we can do our job the best. One thing that helped me overcome it though was when I was at the church, and I had people working under me. I had an amazing staff. I mean, I had a music director who was super uber talented, had a video guy that was amazing, a graphic designer. They were all super talented. And the thing that I'd have to constantly encourage them was like, hey, we're trying to get volunteers involved. And so if someone can do it like 60% as good as you, 80% as good as you, like that's good enough. Because like they're all, a lot of them would be creatives, or a lot of them were perfectionists. They want it done really well, and other positions, other industries and stuff too. But they would feel like no one's going to do it as good as me, so I have to do it. And I was really the one that had to keep pushing them and say, hey, if they can do it 80% as good as you, that's a win. They're using their gifts and volunteering and all that. Let's get them on to help regularly with it. And it's okay that it's not quite as good as you doing it. And like, really, it's a mindset thing that you have to. And so that from my early days at the church, that was just something I had to be the one instilling in my team in order for us to grow our volunteer base.
It's like getting yourself out of the way.
Yeah.
And do you know what's amazing too? The more that I hire people who are skilled in that area, because you had mentioned earlier about hiring that unicorn that can do 5 different jobs, and let's be honest, if you had that person, you're going to throw so much work at them that they're going to be so busy, it's going to be hard to turn those projects, right? It's better to divide and conquer. And what I'm finding is the more I invest in high quality, gifted, talented people who are smarter, especially let's talk about development. If I hire a developer who is much smarter and knows much more about the WordPress scene than I do, our team as a whole is only going to be better. Mm-hmm. So I do want to think about, as we're talking mindset, is to get yourself out of the way and know that you can be duplicated. Maybe not as a person, but your skill sets or, the jobs that you do.
Yeah. And I think figuring out what your one of the books I'm reading calls it the queen bee role, the QBR. Which book is it? I think it's Clockwork, as I'm reading by Mike Michalowicz. But he talks about the queen bee role, and he's basically like, what's the one thing that's like most important for the business to do well? And as a person, what's the one thing that, and it may be the queen bee role, it may not be, but for him and his company, he realizes like he's the one that needs to write the books. Like when it comes to the small business books, like that's something that's hard to outsource. It's not that you couldn't like come up with an outline and give it to a ghostwriter and stuff like that, but for his personality and stuff, like he just needs to be the one writing it. But everything else, like he can have somebody else do. And so, in our business, it might be like, maybe I'm the sales, even the sales you could probably outsource. But
I was going to say, what's your queen bee role, Johnny?
What's my queen bee role? I don't know. I'm not sure that I think, the thing that my clients appreciate about me, and it's not that someone else couldn't do it, because I'm sure you're the one doing it in your business, but the consulting time that I give them, where I can pull all of my expertise and skills and knowledge together to have like a informed conversation about marketing or about the way a website should be or something. I think that's probably where it would be hard for me, because there's no real script, right? It's like every situation is a little different. And so I think that's probably one of those things for me, but most of the other stuff I could probably outsource, I have somebody else do.
Right. Right. So now that we've identified what we need, what's the process of hiring? Like, is it just, because you've already walked through this with me and you helped me significantly on giving me this process, but it's not, how do you set yourself up for success when hiring a candidate?
Yeah. I mean, I think, people tend to make the mistake of hiring too quickly. And so I think anytime you can just slow down a little bit, not put it off, not say like, oh, I'm going to get to that in 5 months, but I mean, just slow down enough to do a good job hiring. And so writing out the job description, talking about what outcomes you want, all those types of things, not just the tasks that they're going to check off each week or each month, but like really, are they supposed to increase the social following? Are they supposed to handle all the support tickets? Are they supposed to, what is the outcome that you're looking for? Because if they're good at what they do, hopefully maybe even better at that than you do it, then they're going to bring some ideas to the table if they know where you're headed versus just the things you're trying to get checked off. So I think anytime you can focus on like the outcome that you want more than the tasks tends to be better. But once you write all that, then you got to figure out, like we were talking earlier, is it a local person? Is it a, overseas person? What's your budget? And then just kind of start, put the net out there. And I think, if you're going to hire overseas, what I always do, and I think is what you and I had talked about, was you want to have a few more hoops for them to jump through than maybe if you were hiring someone locally or in the States, because you want to make sure that they're going to be consistently quick responding. You want to make sure that they're going to follow through. You want to make sure that they really want this. And so I think by having a few extra hoops, like when we were hiring someone overseas, we'd put a job posting out there. They would reply to it and send their resume or whatever. And then we would kind of just quickly filter through those and then send them to an actual like official job application on our website. And so even though we sent that to maybe 50 to 70% of the people, because we were only looking at what they gave us for like 10 or 15 seconds, like, oh, they mentioned WordPress, they mentioned this and that. They might possibly be a good fit. Here's the next step. Go fill out this job application, where we asked a lot more detailed questions. And then from there, I was kind of flagging them, like which ones, seem like they could be in the top 10% or 20%. And then I would go spend some more time looking at those top 10, 20%, like reading more of what they submitted. And then kind of eventually, getting them on a video call for an interview. What did we do? No, we did a test project first. And so we said, hey, we'll pay you for this. You have this much time. We'll pay you this rate. I'll give you the instructions. Are you up for that? And then we had 5 or 6 candidates do like all the same test project of the types of things we were wanting them to be able to do. And then from there, looking at how well they did those, then we video interviewed the top 2 or 3 candidates and then offered one of them the job. But by the time they had gotten through that, like, there was a lot of hoops there, right? Like respond initially, job application, paid project, video interview, lots of steps. And so I think the more that you can kind of qualify them along the way, then it makes it easier to know that you're getting the right person.
Definitely. I know that was a game changer. And some of the questions that you had, because like in general, because I had hired in other positions before, but this was different. And I feel like it's always different when it's your baby, right? Because like we had mentioned, I am so mostly invested in this business. It's ridiculous. So I'm constantly working to pull my emotions out of it. Mm-hmm. And having a script, having the plan written out and the different stages of that hiring process, for me, it was clockwork. Mm-hmm. And it really helped me identify the right candidate for my position. And by the time I got to the interview and having the interview items listed out and a couple of the key questions that it was so awesome. The question about it was if I had contacted your previous employer, something about what would they tell me why I wouldn't hire you?
Yeah. The horror story that they would tell you or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And what did you have to learn or what you've overcome since then? That that was awesome because my current admin, her answer to that, I was just ready to hire in an instant because of you could see like the personal development behind it. It wasn't just, oh, I didn't do this right, but it allowed her to think about and of how, oh yeah, I did overcome this. And it just like how proud she was to say that, and how that she was able to speak openly. And it wasn't, because when we start getting interviews, it's very formal. Like you don't really see their personality in it.
They kind of tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah. And I think that's important. And I don't know where you come up with those questions, but whenever you sit down to hire, for whoever's listening, think through, yes, you want to know about their previous jobs, what they do, the skill sets, all of that, but throw in questions that makes them think and that would pull out their personality or to get to know them as just a person.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. It's great to have a high quality, people who are skilled. I also want to hire someone who fits within my culture. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we didn't touch on is what type of person do you want in your business?
Yeah.
And the type of culture that you have, like, what does that look like?
So early on in my hiring days when I was on staff at the church, we got to the point where we needed a video person. We had actually already had a video person, but they had kind of moved on. And so we were looking for a new video person. And I got enamored with this one particular videographer who worked at a huge corporate company, had some like fantastic stuff in their video reel and, all this. And so like, I was like really wanting to hire this person. And so I hired them and I was hiring them based off of their skill, but not really the culture or personality fit. And it ended up being like the biggest disaster ever. I mean, out of all the people that I hired, it was probably the worst fit. It was just the personality clashed. Like he wanted everything just perfect. I think a lot of the stuff that had been in his video reel had been stuff that he had worked on, but maybe it was like, at this big corporate company, there was like 5 or 6, 7 people producing that video. And at the church, I needed him to be like the start to finish, whether it's animation, shooting the camera, editing, like whatever it is, audio, color correction. Like I kind of needed a jack of all video, not just someone who was really good at a few particular things. And so it was just, and he's super talented. Like it really was more a reflection of me not figuring out what I needed and hiring solely on skill than anything with him. Like he was fine. It was just that I wasn't clear about what I needed, and I wasn't focused enough on the personality and the culture fit of what we were trying to do in a church environment versus like a corporate one. And so I think, now when I hire, I would rather have the person who is a great fit and is passionate about what we're doing and that I love to spend time with than the most skilled person. Because if they're passionate about it, if I love spending time with them, then like they're going to be able to take their skill from 50, 60, 70% up to like, top of the game. And so now like my most recent hires, like my team's just fun. Like they're like, we get on calls and there's jokes and there's laughter and there's telling about like what they're up to. And it's not so business. And then when we need to get down to business, like we can do it, but it's so much more than that. And so I really appreciate, my team. They're fun. Like I hope I'm as fun as they are, because I feel like they're really fun. And sometimes I'm a little too serious, but they're just fun, And so I would hire more on someone that you're going to love to spend time with and have conversations with. If it's hard to have a conversation with them, like that's probably not a good sign,
I completely agree. Because I know in my own space, everything's virtual. So I look for the people who have a personality that can bring that level to Slack or, because let's be honest, like we're all on our islands in the interwebs and I'm looking for people to show up and interact with me. So that's a great point. So now that we're ready, we've done the interviewing process. You had touched on onboarding. And this is something that I'm currently reworking my own process. Can you give us just a few points about what does a good, successful onboarding process look like?
So some of the things that we do, and feel free to chime in because I'm sure you've got some great insights too. But I, now what we've been doing is we've been having them sign a non-disclosure agreement we use Better Proposals for our proposals. So it's literally just a template in there that I have them sign. Same with the job description and the offer. Like, even though they've seen the job posting and stuff, we send them that and say, like, here's the offer, here's the amount that we're going to pay, this is when we're going to review you. And one thing that I would recommend too is have like a 30 or 60 day like review to decide if they're going to be like a permanent fit, because that takes the pressure off. Like, and I told all of our recent hires this. I was like, hey, we're going to hire you for 60 days or 30 days, whichever. And we're going to review after that and then decide if it's a good fit for you to like stay in this role. So this is kind of, consider this more like a trial, and you get to try us on and see if we're a good place that you want to work and that you enjoy doing the work. And we're going to kind of try you out and throw stuff at you and see how you respond and handle it. And then we'll kind of reevaluate. And then at that point, like, we'll make this a permanent thing or not. And then that way it just kind of, it gets the best out of them. Because if they know that it's like, they've got 60 days to like really wow you, they're going to show up early, stay late, go the extra mile, do it all. So, which is great. That's what you want. And then it's good because then you don't feel like as much pressure of like, oh man, this person just is not a good fit, but I just hired them, and you feel bad letting them go. And so I think it's a good way to have an out, and then some of the other things that we do is we'll have the training set up. So what's the knowledge that everybody on the team needs that's like would be the same for any position. We want them to go through those different training videos or content or whatever it is. And then what are some specific things for their role, and some of those might be videos that I record or someone on the team records, or some of them might be like training that I've previously purchased somewhere else that would be perfect for this role that I want them to go through. Those types of things. We have weekly check-ins where we have a video call to kind of check in on everyone, how they're doing, what they're doing, what the wins were, projects that are coming up. And then something that we've been doing lately, I don't know if you and I have even talked about this. So we've been setting like I've been setting 90-day company goals for the company, like either targets we want to hit or things we want to do or improve or whatever. But then I let each team member come up with their own like mini monthly goal to help us towards the quarterly company goal. So it really gives them ownership when they're coming up with a way to contribute to the larger thing without me just saying, I think because we're trying to get to here, you need to do this, this, and this over the next 3 months. Like, there's a lot more buy-in. So some of the things that we have, I don't know where I had it posted up here, but I cleaned my office for a video shoot the other day. But one of them was like, we want to document our processes so that everyone on the team can be out for 2 weeks and nothing gets dropped. So if it's me out, someone can do the stuff that I usually do. If it's someone on my team's out for 2 weeks because they're on vacation or sick or whatever, then someone can pick up the stuff that they do and it's documented. So I let everybody else decide, okay, that's the goal of where we're trying to get to. How can you help us get there? And they're like, oh, well, I need to document this because this is really important. I do this a lot. Someone needs to be able to do that. And like, so they're kind of like then self-motivated to like figure out how to help with it versus me just saying, you need to document this, 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 and this, Another one of our goals, our quarterly goals for this month is to reduce the time that it takes to solve a support ticket from when it comes in to when it's resolved. And so I just said, hey guys, what's a reasonable like target for us to try to get to? And everybody on the team was like, well, what if we could get it done within 24 hours, assuming it's a business day, not like on the weekends and stuff, 24 hours. So if it comes in on a Tuesday at 2, it's resolved by a Wednesday at 2. And I was like, that sounds great. And then really the goal for them is, what do we need to do? What can we change in the process to get them resolved quicker and let them come up with the ideas for that rather than me just saying like, oh, we've got to respond within this amount of time. We've got to do this, whatever. Like, that's just not going to be very motivating for anybody. And so it's great to see like their creativity with the solutions of how to get to the outcomes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's good. That I love that. because right now I feel like my own business that we're just putting out fires right now. Like we haven't quite got to the point. Like I have 90-day goals, but they're more like have tos. Like we have to do this or we're going to be stepping backwards. Like we can't do that. We have to figure out our social media. We have to figure out, but I love that the buy-in of each of our team members. So how important is processes when it comes to hiring? Is this kind of, because I feel like processes and systems set you free, allows you to scale. And that's something that we haven't emphasized on how important it is to have. One thing is to have your documentation, but as you're doing your onboarding, you had mentioned this is our company training. That's a process, right?
Yeah, and it's something you have to create a lot of times the first time you're doing it. And, it's easy to hire for a role that you've already hired before because you have the job description, you have the sample project. I think a lot of things, but besides even like the 30 or 60-day trial, just think about like, what would a trial project be for any position where you could say like, hey, I'm going to pay you at this rate for this many hours to complete this trial project that you could give the same project to 5 people. What would that be and what would you need to test to see if they're a good fit? So even for an admin person, what kind of tests could you give them, to pay them to see if they're a good fit? Because when you start thinking about what the trial project is and the things you want to test, then you start to really understand what you're looking for versus just kind of like a long list of tasks or things you want done. And so I think anytime you can think about that, but it gets hard with the processes when you're hiring a new thing every time, right? It's like, I just got off a call for a client that wants to do a podcast launch and they want us to do like the consulting and the marketing plan for it. And they already have a radio program and they're spending a lot of money for their radio program, but they don't know how to launch a podcast successfully. And so they're wanting us to do that. Well, we've launched a number of podcasts, but I don't have like a proposal for this is what we're going to deliver to help you launch your podcast. So that's like a lot of work for me now to write that proposal versus the website build for the church that we've done, dozens and dozens and dozens of those. Like I have a church specific website build template that has their language and all that. And so I can create that very quickly, and so I think hiring is a little bit the same, right? Like the first time it's going to take a little bit more effort because you got to write that company training, all that documentation. But then your second person, you're going to already have some of it recorded. You're just going to do job specific stuff. So it is an investment in time. And you have to just remind yourself that, look, okay, it's going to take me some time to hire them. It's going to take me some time to onboard and train them. And so I'm going to actually, over the next 90 days, lose time. Mm-hmm. But if I hire the right person, then over the next year, I'm going to gain back that extra time I'm putting in over these 90 days and then infinitely more, right? Like my team members that I hired in February of this year or whatever, like they're kicking butt. They're solving all this stuff right now while you and I are having this call so that the fires aren't coming into my email box. I get my email box down to like 8 emails like on Friday.
Goals.
Like, it was like awesome, right?
That is goals.
Like, yeah. But it was just because like I'm not the bottleneck for so much of the communication now. And so, but it does take an investment and you have to kind of say, okay, I'm going to put some things aside. I'm going to focus to getting this person up to speed so that they can succeed. And then, I'll kind of pick up my full workload and then some that, we all have.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. And it comes back to mindset. I feel like everything that we do as business owners, it comes back to mindset. And I can't emphasize enough knowing, like you said, taking the time now because it's going to help you in the long run and look at the greater impact it'll have on your business if it's not just you. Because let's face it, it's very hard to scale your business when it's just you.
Yeah.
So, Johnny, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today because, and I said it before, but you have walked through this hiring process with me when I was outsourcing. And since then, I've hired 3 individuals that has helped grow my team significantly and just not just my team as in numbers, but what we can handle as a business. It's amazing to me the more that our team grows and we get the right people in the right positions, how it takes the pressure off of me to stay in the area that I want to be in on working on the business and not so tied into the day-to-day project work. It's just amazing the dynamics as it changed. So thank you so much for opening up to us today about hiring and how to hire successfully.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure, Jen. And if there's anything I can answer for anyone, or otherwise, I'd be more than glad to.
Yes, and definitely check out johnnyflash.com is how to get a hold of Johnny. We'll have his contact information in our show notes. And please, if you find this episode helpful in any way in your hiring journey, please make sure to take a screenshot of our Rainy Day Talks podcast on social media and tag us. We love to hear. And we know you're watching. We're now needing you to subscribe. So do not forget, we're on iTunes and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe. Johnny, once again, thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward, I feel like I've already got a note of what I'm going to have you back for. So just be on the lookout for that email to come through. So thank you again.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, take care.
See ya.
A huge thank you to Mark at Mark Levander Productions for sponsoring Season 1 of Rainy Day Talks podcast. I'm very particular who we partner with, and Mark was a no-brainer. Mark does all of our video editing and puts all of the components and pieces together for our YouTube channel and podcast. If you are looking to publish your own YouTube series, podcast, or need photography work, please contact Mark through marklevanderproductions.com.